When he knocked on my door that morning, I knew who it was before I even looked. Some sounds never leave your memory. The knock was soft, careful, almost unsure. For a moment, I did not move. I just stood there in the kitchen, holding a towel in my hands. The tea kettle was still warm on the stove. The house was quiet, the way I had learned to like it. He knocked again. Years ago, I would have run to the door. My heart would have jumped with hope. My hands would have shaken. But that morning, my heart stayed calm. I walked slowly to the door. I opened it. And there he was. Older, thinner, his hair no longer dark like I remembered. His eyes looked tired, not angry, not proud, just tired. We stood there in silence. I didn't know where else to go, he said softly. His voice was the same. That steady voice that once made me feel safe. That voice that once promised me forever. For a brief second, I saw the young man I married. The man who held my hand during storms. The man who used to laugh in this very doorway. But that memory felt far away. Like a photograph left too long in the sun. I did not cry. I did not ask him why he had come back after all these years. Instead, I felt something strange. Peace. Not the peace of happiness, but the peace of someone who has already survived the worst. He looked at me as if he expected something. Maybe tears, maybe anger, maybe forgiveness. What he did not expect was the woman standing in front of him. Because the woman he left behind no longer lived here. I was 23 when I married him. I believed in simple things back then. Love, loyalty, building a home together. We did not have much money. Our first apartment was small. The paint on the walls was old, and the kitchen cabinets did not close properly. But to me, it felt like a palace. Because he was there. We built our life slowly, one chair at a time, one savings account at a time, one dream at a time. He worked long hours. I stayed home in the beginning. Later, I worked part-time at a local store when our son started school. The day our son was born, he cried harder than I did. He held that tiny baby in his arms and said, "I'll protect you both." I believed him. For many years, our life felt steady, not perfect, but steady. Sunday mornings meant pancakes and soft music playing on the radio. We would sit around the table, talking about nothing important. The window would be open, letting in fresh air. In the evenings, after dinner, we would sit on the couch. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just watched television quietly. It was a simple life, and I was grateful. But life does not always change in loud ways. Sometimes it shifts slowly, quietly, so quietly that you do not notice until the distance is already there. I cannot say exactly when things began to feel different. Maybe it was when he stopped telling me about his day. Maybe it was when his phone started staying face down on the table. Maybe it was when he began saying, "I'm just tired," more often than usual. At first, I ignored it. Marriage goes through seasons, I told myself. Not every season feels like spring. Our son was growing older. He needed attention, homework, school events. I stayed busy. I filled my days with responsibilities. But at night, when the house grew silent, I felt it. That small space between us in the bed. It used to be warm. Now it felt cold. One evening, I asked gently, "Are you happy?" He looked surprised by the question. "Of course I am," he said quickly. But he did not look at me. And that was the first time I felt something break inside me. Fade to scene, rain tapping softly against a window. Camera focuses on empty kitchen chair. I began noticing more things. He came home later. He laughed at messages on his phone but did not share what was funny. When I spoke, sometimes he seemed far away. "Is something wrong?" I asked one night while washing dishes. "No," he answered. "You think too much." Maybe I did. Maybe I wanted reassurance. Maybe I was afraid of losing something I had built my entire life around. But love should not make you feel afraid. It should make you feel chosen. And slowly, I no longer felt chosen. Still, I stayed quiet. I did not want to accuse him of anything. I did not want to create problems where maybe there were none. So I tried harder. I cooked his favorite meals. I wore the blue dress he once said he liked. I waited up for him even when I was tired. Sometimes he noticed. Sometimes he didn't. Looking back now, I realized something important. When someone begins to leave you in their heart, you feel it long before they walk out the door. You feel it in the way they stop reaching for your hand. You feel it in the silence that grows heavy between simple words. You feel it in the way your laughter no longer matches. But I kept hopping. Hope can be both beautiful and painful. I hoped it was just stress. I hoped it was just a phase. I hoped love would fix itself. I did not know then that love requires two people fighting for it. And I was the only one still fighting. The changes did not happen all at once. They arrived quietly, like dust settling on furniture you forgot to clean. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. I did not want to be the kind of wife who questions everything. I wanted to trust him the way I always had. But trust feels different when it begins to thin. He started coming home later than usual. Not every night, just enough to make me notice. He would say, work was busy, or traffic was bad. I nodded. I believed him. But his eyes did not stay on mine for long anymore. At night, I would lie beside him and listen to his breathing. He used to turn toward me in his sleep. His arm would rest over my waist. Even without words, I felt close to him. Now his back faced me. It was such a small thing. But small things matter. One evening, I reached my hand toward his shoulder. He shifted slightly. Not harshly, not angrily. Just away. My hand stayed there in the air for a second before I slowly pulled it back. Are you tired? I asked softly. Yes, he replied. That was all. No anger. No comfort. Just distance. The phone became part of him. It was always near, always face down, always locked quickly when I walked into the room. I tried not to notice, but I noticed. One afternoon, while he was in the shower, his phone lit up on the table. I was not searching for anything. I simply saw the name. A woman's name I did not recognize. The message was simple. Thank you for today. I needed that. My chest tightened. The words were not romantic, but they were warm. Warmer than he had been with me in months. I did not open the phone. I did not read more. I just stood there, staring. When he came out of the bathroom, I was still holding the dish towel in my hand. Who is she? I asked quietly. He froze for a second. Who? The woman who thanked you for today. His face changed, not with guilt, not exactly, more with annoyance. She's just a colleague, he said. You're overthinking. Overthinking. That word again. It made me feel small. As if my feelings were something silly, something embarrassing. I'm not accusing you, I said gently. I just want to understand. There's nothing to understand, he replied. Then he walked past me. That was the moment I felt something important shift. Not because of the message, but because of the way he dismissed me. Our son noticed before we did. He would look at both of us during dinner, sensing something unspoken. Why is it so quiet? He asked once. We're just tired, I answered quickly. His father nodded, but the silence stayed. It filled the room like thick air. Conversations became shorter. How was work? Fine. How was your day? Okay. That was all. The laughter we once shared felt like a memory from another house. One night, after our son had gone to bed, I gathered my courage. I feel like you're far away, I said. He was sitting on the edge of the couch. I'm right here, he answered. But not really, I whispered. He sighed heavily. What do you want from me? The question surprised me. I want us, I said, the way we used to be. He looked down at his hands. People change, he said quietly. Those words echoed inside me. People change. I understood that. But change should not feel like abandonment. The weeks that followed were the hardest. He stopped telling me where he was going. He started taking calls outside. When I asked simple questions, he responded with short answers. It felt like walking on thin ice. I was careful with my words, careful with my tone, careful with my breathing. I did not want to push him further away. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror in our bedroom and looked at myself. Was I different? Had I become boring? Had I forgotten how to be the woman he fell in love with? I saw fine lines near my eyes. I saw tiredness. I saw someone trying very hard. And for the first time, I wondered if trying alone was the problem. He came home past midnight one night. The house was dark, except for the small lamp I had left on. I was worried, I said. You don't need to be, he replied. I called you. My phone died. I wanted to believe him, but something in his voice felt practiced, like a sentence repeated before. I did not argue. I simply nodded. But that night, I cried silently in the bathroom so he would not hear me. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears falling into my hands. I did not cry because I knew something for sure. I cried because I felt myself losing him slowly. And I did not know how to stop it. The distance became visible even to others. My sister asked once, "Are you two okay?" "Yes," I answered quickly. But she looked at me longer than usual. Sometimes we hide things so well from the world, but not from those who truly see us. Then one afternoon, everything became clearer. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we once celebrated birthdays, the same table where we helped our son with homework. He did not look angry. He did not look emotional. He looked tired. "I need space," he said. The words felt rehearsed. "Space for what?" I asked. "I don't know," he answered. I'm not happy." Not happy. The sentence landed softly, but it broke something loudly inside me. "I thought we could fix this," I said. He shook his head slowly. "I don't think it's something that can be fixed." There was no shouting, no dramatic scene, just two people sitting across from each other, and years of love quietly falling apart. When he packed his clothes a few days later, I watched from the doorway. Our son stood behind me. "Dad," he said softly. His father turned and forced a smile. "It's just for a while," he said, but his eyes avoided mine. He carried the suitcase to the door. I walked beside him. "Are you coming back?" I asked gently. He paused. "I don't know." The door closed behind him, and in that moment, the house became unbearably quiet. That was how the distance became separation. Not with anger, not with betrayal discovered in dramatic ways, but with slow drifting, with words left unsaid, with feelings ignored. And as I stood in the middle of our living room that night, I understood something painful. Sometimes love does not end with a fight. Sometimes it fades, and the fading hurts even more. The first morning without him felt unreal. I woke up at the same time as always. For a few seconds I forgot. Then I turned to his side of the bed. Cold, flat, untouched. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet. The house had a different sound, a hollow sound, as if the walls themselves were confused. I did not cry right away. I simply got up and made coffee. Out of habit, I poured 2 cups. Then I stood there, looking at the second one. Slowly, I poured it back into the pot. That small act broke me. Not because of the coffee, but because it made everything real. Our son tried to be strong. He did not ask many questions. He just watched me carefully, as if studying my face for answers. "Is Dad coming home today?" he asked one morning. "I don't know," I replied honestly. He nodded. Children understand more than we think. That week, I learned how heavy silence can be. The evenings were the worst. The hours between dinner and bedtime felt endless. I would sit in the living room, staring at the television without really watching. I kept expecting to hear his key in the door, but it never came. A few days later, he called. Not to ask about me, to speak to our son. I handed the phone over quietly and walked into the kitchen. I could hear his voice from the other room, calm, casual, as if nothing had changed. After the call ended, our son came to me. "He said he's staying somewhere else for a while," he said. I nodded. I know. But what I did not know was where I stood in his heart anymore. One evening, I opened his side of the closet. The space looked larger than it ever had. Empty hangers swayed slightly as I touched them. That was when the truth settled inside me. He was not just taking space. He was building a life without me. And I was still standing in the doorway, hoping he would return. That realization hurt more than anything else. Not anger, not betrayal, just the quiet understanding that I was no longer chosen. For weeks, I lived in a strange place between hope and reality. Part of me believed he would come back, that he would realize his mistake, That he would knock on the door and say, I was wrong. Another part of me felt something shifting inside. A small voice whispering, you cannot force someone to stay. I ignored that voice at first. I did not want strength. I wanted my marriage back. But strength has a way of growing when it is needed. One morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself carefully. My eyes were swollen from nights of little sleep. My shoulders looked tired. But there was something else there. Something steady. For the first time, I asked myself a different question. Not why did he leave, but why am I still waiting? That question changed everything. I started going for walks in the mornings. At first, it was just to escape the house. The quiet inside felt too heavy. But slowly, the walks became something more. I noticed birds I had never seen before. The way sunlight touched the trees, the simple rhythm of my own breathing. I realized I had spent so many years focusing on being a wife that I had forgotten how to simply be myself. Without his presence, I began rediscovering small parts of who I was. I liked quiet mornings. I liked reading by the window. I liked rearranging furniture just because I felt like it. These were small things, but they were mine. I decided to take on more hours at the small store where I worked part-time. It was not about money. It was about movement. Being around people helped. Smiling at customers, arranging shelves, listening to small stories from strangers. One older woman once said to me, "You have kind eyes." I almost cried. Because for so long, I had felt invisible. At work, I was seen. Not as someone's wife, but as myself. Months passed. He did not return. We spoke only about practical things. Bills, our son, schedules. His voice on the phone became distant, polite, formal. I stopped asking when he was coming home. I stopped asking if he missed me. Because I began to understand something painful but freeing. If someone wants to stay, they stay. If someone wants to fight, they fight. He had made his choice. And slowly, I began to make mine. One night, after our son went to bed, I sat at the table with a notebook. I wrote down everything I was feeling. Not to send to him. Not to show anyone. Just to empty my heart. I wrote about the day we married. About the night our son was born. About the slow distance that crept in. I wrote about the message on his phone. About the way he said, "You're overthinking." And then I wrote something new. I deserve love that stays. Seeing those words on paper made my hands shake. Because for the first time, I believed them. The real turning point did not happen when he walked out. It happened the day I stopped begging silently in my heart. The day I stopped waiting for his apology. The day I realized that even if he came back, something inside me had already changed. I was no longer afraid of being alone. I was learning how to stand on my own feet. And that scared me a little. But it also gave me peace. About a year later, I heard that he was living with someone else. The news reached me quietly, through mutual friends. No drama, no confrontation. I sat at the kitchen table and let the information settle. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it did not destroy me. That was when I knew. I was no longer the same woman who stood in that doorway the night he left. Back then, I felt broken. Now I felt awake. Not healed completely, but awake. Aware of my own strength. Aware of my own worth. And aware that sometimes, losing someone is the only way to find yourself again. The second year without him felt different from the first. The first year was about surviving. The second year was about rebuilding. The house no longer felt hollow. It felt quieter, yes, but not empty. I moved things around. I painted the bedroom walls a soft cream color. I changed the curtains in the living room. Small changes, but each one reminded me that this space still belonged to me. I stopped keeping his side of the closet untouched. One afternoon, I folded the remaining shirts he had left behind and placed them in a box. I did not cry while doing it. I simply whispered, "Thank you for the years we had." And I closed the lid. My relationship with my son grew deeper. Without realizing it, we had both been waiting for him in different ways. Now we stopped waiting. We began cooking dinner together. We talked more openly. One evening he said, "Mom, you're stronger than you think." I smiled. "No," I told him gently. "I'm stronger than I used to be. There is a difference." Strength is not something you are born with. Sometimes it is something you grow into. When life leaves you no choice, I forgave him long before he asked. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Holding anger felt heavy. It made my chest tight. It kept my thoughts restless at night. Forgiveness felt lighter. It did not mean I approved of what happened. It meant I accepted it. And acceptance is quieter than anger. I stopped replaying the last conversation in my mind. I stopped wondering what I could have done differently. 2 people build a marriage. 2 people must protect it. I had done my part. That truth settled inside me like calm water. At work, I became more confident. I began helping new employees learn their tasks. I organized shelves in ways that made sense to me. I smiled without forcing it. One afternoon, a customer said, "You seem peaceful." The word surprised me. Peaceful. I had once believed peace came from a stable marriage, a full house, a shared life. Now I understood something different. Peace comes from within. It comes from knowing you will be okay. Even if someone walks away, time kept moving. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. There were moments when memories would visit me suddenly. A song we once danced to. A restaurant we used to love. Sometimes I felt a small ache, but it was not sharp anymore. It was soft, like touching an old scar. Then, one early spring morning, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not urgent, just steady. My heart did not race. It did not sink. It simply noticed. I walked to the door and opened it. And there he stood. Older, more fragile. His confidence was gone. His shoulders curved slightly forward. His eyes searched mine carefully. For a long second, neither of us spoke. "I was hoping you'd answer," he said quietly. "I live here," I replied gently. He gave a small, nervous smile. "I know," looked different but familiar. Like a photograph that had faded with time. "I made mistakes," he said. I did not interrupt. He spoke about regret, about realizing too late what he had lost, about loneliness, about how things had not turned out the way he imagined. "I thought I needed something else," he said, "but I didn't understand what I already had." His voice trembled slightly. There was no pride left in it, just tired honesty. I listened quietly. Years ago, I would have interrupted him with tears, with questions, with hope. But I felt calm, because I was no longer waiting for these words. "I want to come home," he said finally. The sentence hung between us. Home. That word once meant everything to me. Now it meant something different. I looked around at the hallway behind me. The new paint, the framed photos, the soft light. This house had changed. But more importantly, I had changed. "I hope you find peace," I said slowly. He blinked. "I'm not asking for much," he added quickly. "Just another chance. Another chance." I searched my heart. There was no anger there. No revenge. No bitterness. But there was also no longing. And that surprised me the most. I realized I did not miss him anymore. I missed who I used to be with him. And that woman no longer existed. "I forgave you a long time ago," I told him. His eyes filled slightly. Then, "But forgiveness doesn't mean returning," I continued softly. He lowered his gaze. "I'm not the same woman you left," I said. And I meant it. The woman he left was afraid of being alone. She doubted her worth. She thought love meant holding on, no matter how much it hurt. The woman standing here now understood something deeper. Love must be mutual. Love must be chosen every day. And love should never make you beg to be seen. He nodded slowly. "I understand," he whispered. I think, in that moment, he truly did. We stood in silence for a few seconds. There was sadness in the air, but not destruction. He stepped back. "I'm glad you're okay," he said. "I am," I answered honestly. And that was the truth. Not because life had been easy, but because I had faced the hardest part and survived it. He turned and walked away. This time, I did not watch him with tears. I closed the door gently, and I felt something settle inside me. Closure. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just quiet completion. After I closed the door that day, I stood still for a long moment. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel it fully. The quiet, the calm, the strength. Years ago, I believed that if he ever came back, my heart would run toward him without hesitation. I believed love would rush back in like a river breaking through a dam. But that is not what happened. Instead, I felt steady, like a tree that had survived many storms. The wind could touch it, but it could not uproot it. I made myself tea that evening, just one cup. And as I sat at the table, I thought about the woman I used to be. She was kind. She was loyal. She loved deeply. But she was afraid of being left, afraid of not being enough. When he walked away, I thought he had taken my worth with him. I thought his choice defined me. But it did not. It took time to understand that. Time, tears, long nights and quiet mornings. Time spent sitting with my own thoughts. Time spent rebuilding a life I never planned to build alone. Pain changes you. It either hardens your heart or deepens it. For a while, I was afraid I would become bitter, afraid I would close myself off forever. But I chose something different. I chose peace. I chose forgiveness. Not for him, for myself. Because carrying anger would have kept me tied to the past. And I was ready to move forward. Now, when I walk in the mornings, I do not feel abandoned. I feel free. Free to think. Free to breathe. Free to exist without wondering if I'm enough. I am enough. Not because someone stayed, but because I stayed with myself. Through heartbreak, through loneliness, through doubt, I did not abandon myself. And that is something I am proud of. Sometimes people come back when they realize what they lost. But life does not pause while they are gone. Time continues. Hearts grow. Scars heal. Strength forms quietly in the background. When he returned, he expected to find the same woman waiting at the door. The woman who would accept any explanation. The woman who would be grateful just to have him back. But she no longer lived here. In her place stood someone calmer, stronger, clearer. A woman who understood that love is not about fear of losing someone. It is about mutual care, mutual respect, mutual effort. I do not hate him. I do not wish him pain. In a strange way, I am thankful. Because losing him forced me to find myself. It forced me to see my own strength. It taught me that being alone is not the same as being empty. Sometimes, being alone is how you discover your own voice again. If you are listening to my story tonight, maybe you are in your own storm. Maybe someone has walked away from you. Maybe you are still waiting at the door. I cannot tell you what will happen next, but I can tell you this. You are stronger than you think. And sometimes, the greatest love story you will ever live is the one where you learn to choose yourself. He came back, but I was no longer the same woman. And that was not a tragedy. It was my growth.